So, welcome to the Kickass Midlife Method, and I'm joined this evening by some women from the community, and we're discussing like the three most common training and nutrition mistakes that midlife women make, and how to change them. So, this is taken from training women over the last 15, 16 years, and particularly in this community, the things that often keep coming up which stall or certainly delay progress that I have seen cropping up over and over again. So maybe those people, if you're watching live, some of them may resonate with you. So we're going to cover why your strength training may not be giving you the results that it should. The three mistakes every woman makes, usually. I would say actually every woman makes since being on this program. How to fix them as soon as possible, and why delay. Even like if you don't action it straight away, it just creates a bit of a delay in your progress. The nutrition truths that actually matter, and then we're going to open it to Q&A at the end. So number one, and I'm using some pictures from our retreat that we held in spring, which was particularly significant because everybody there, when we were benchmarking kettlebells, were swinging too light, and straight away, immediately, people leapt up in some cases by, I think, 10 kilos. So we're talking big differences here. So number one is starting too light with your weights. When you're benchmarking, so benchmark workout means that you're actually setting your 5 rep max, 10 rep max, for instance, so that actually you can then go on from there in your next workout, actually at the right level of strength for you. And what is happening again and again is that the weights are too easy. So you think that you're benchmarking, but actually sometimes you're not quite reaching that. And if you are benchmarking, then it's what you do afterwards. So for some people listening on, you might know this already. For some people, you may not. And it's always worth reminding because it's something typically that women have struggled with, particularly our generation, because we grew up with legs, bums, and tums, Les Mills, pink dumbbells, lift a bottle of water for your biceps for magazines. I think I've written that. I held my hands up, unfortunately, been made to do that. So it's no surprise, actually, understanding mentally and physically what we're capable of takes a bit of work in and of itself. So in order to grow muscle, mentally and physically, actually, you absolutely have to challenge your muscle. And it's learning to understand what challenge feels like, what it looks like, and the effect that that has, which is really, really important. So there is no doubt that research all shows that it's really important that increasing your weight to challenge your muscles, which is called progressive overload, absolutely is vital. As usual, very few studies done on women, and there's hardly any on peri and postmenopausal. Interestingly, what is out there does show, for instance, that increasing volume, so for instance, number of sets, may also have more of a effect, including progressive overload with women postmenopausal. Perimenopausal, the research shows definitely progressive overload. Postmenopausal women also shows that maybe it's progressive overload and volume, which is interesting. From my point of view and my anecdotal evidence coaching women for years, it's actually progressive overload's the most important thing, for two reasons. It's not just about actually the effect on your muscle. It's actually about the fact that it gives you endorphins, so you start to enjoy the exercise, and therefore the exercise, you want to do it. So there's like a number of things at play there. It's not just, okay, this creates that aesthetically, so therefore I'm going to do it. It actually has to combine with the fact that you start feeling a sense of empowerment, you enjoy it, and therefore you're more likely to carry it on. So there's that. So when you're doing your benchmark workout, for those people, some people have done it this week, and when you come to do it, you really have to mentally trying to get into that feeling of like not sticking with what's safe to you, what feels like, worrying about injury. Obviously, I'm not asking you to lift a weight that's going to risk injury, but you're often much more capable than you think you are. This case in point with these kettlebells, everybody came in and said, this is the way I can do, that's the safest way. I don't think there was a single woman there who didn't increase by at least 10 kilos. So, a good way of thinking about it is if you finish a set and you think, that was hard, I did really work hard, but you're thinking, that was fine, it was okay, it's too light, it's too light. So, you really need to be thinking of it feels like an 8 out of 10. If it doesn't feel like an 8 out of 10, you need to increase it. So your strength and empowerment comes from challenge, not comfort. So you really, really need to think about that. So it's like number one mistake. And then the number two is once you've done that benchmark, it's failure to increase your weight on a workout by workout basis. So I have seen this tons in this last block that people have done their benchmark workout. So if you do a benchmark workout, for those new to the program, some of you won't get onto that yet. Some of you are on body workouts, body weight, some of you on spinal programs, some of you on different things. But at some point, all of you will get to this point. And once you do your benchmark, what it does is gives you an indication of what's the max you can get to, and then it sets what you do for the next phase. So therefore, you would then say, I'm going to take 85%, for instance, of my 5 rep max and start from that basis. And what you'll find is you might have thought that you were strongest here, end of one block, did another benchmark, and actually you found you were actually even stronger. So rather than going back to where you left off, you start at 85% of your benchmark. But then you progress every week from there. You don't just stick at 85% and you don't just stick on a week by week basis. If you've gone back and you've done a set of 12 and again 10, 12, whatever your set has been put as for your program by me or one of the other coaches, if you're reaching that rep range, then it means you need to increase on your next set. So rather than doing 4 sets all at the same weight, you need to increase and you really need to challenge it. So say you were on 4 sets of 10 reps. If your first set is 10, your second set you increase and you reach 9, then you might actually increase the third set again at 9. If you only reach 8, you stick at that weight at 8 and keep going. That is the only way you will increase your strength. If you just stick at the weight that you feel comfortable at, then you're not having an effect. You're just maintaining. So you need to add weight weekly and or per workout set. If, for instance, you are training at home and you don't have access to lots of weights, the alternative is we're looking at adding reps or slowing your tempo. So you'll do a 2 second, so say in a squat, you'll do 2 second count down, pause, 1 second up. That's another way of progressive overloading. Similar effect as adding another weight because you're slowing it down. Or you shorten your rest period. Maybe you've been set 45 seconds. We'd be looking at shortening that to 20 seconds. Most important thing, you've got to track it. If you're not tracking it, you're not progressing. Be really specific, be accountable and take charge of that yourself. So somebody, who was it? Can't remember who it was. Oh, somebody this week did a benchmark and their accountability, Krishna, I don't know whether Krishna's here, her accountability was really good. She didn't just put in her notes what her rep range was and her sets. She also said at what point did her technique go on what set and on what weight. So it means that as you go forward, you can test that again in 6 weeks' time. So it's really important to track that data, and that's what the app gives you. And then number 3 is being scared to fail. So we're all lots of very driven women in this community. We all like to succeed. And maybe what that's doing is thinking, oh, I don't want to fail in the weights because that means I failed. And actually what you want to do is fail. You want to reach failure. So reaching failure means that you literally, maybe you're getting to that 8 reps of a 10 and you're like, oh, I can't actually get that up, and you have to drop them on the floor. Or and I don't want any of you to do this yet because you're not quite at it, but say if you were a squat rack, they have safety rails. And so once you're very, very strong and you're going to failure, you're actually in a squat rack and there's a get out clause. So if you're at the bottom of the squat, you can't get back up, you go underneath it, and the squat rack will hold the barbell for you. But that's much further advanced for all of you at the moment. But it's also just learning, which is again, I'm not expecting any of you to be all there yet, but it is because it's a mental thing as well as a physical thing to be able to learn to trust yourself to try and reach for failure. But I want you to start thinking about that. You don't always have to train to failure, but near failure, so kind of your 9 out of 10 effort, that's the thing that leads to neuromuscular adaptation. And also, crucially, the mental confidence to then keep pushing it again. So you're aiming for major lifts, so major compound lifts. I'm talking about, your squats, your barbell squats, for instance, those kind of things. You're looking for 1 to 2 reps from failure. So you need to stop giving up too early on some of them. And discomfort, not pain. I'm not talking about pain, but discomfort is where the change begins. So it's also learning what discomfort feels like and trusting that that's okay. Your body is a really clever machine, and it's really good at discomfort and then progressing. But very clear difference between discomfort and actually a sharp pain that starts getting worse. So those are the three things I often see. Then turning over to nutrition, I get asked this so often. Can you recommend some really healthy snacks that I can eat? And this often indicates what that's indicating really is that you're not eating sufficiently in your main meals. Because if you're eating sufficiently, you've got the three macros in your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you're eating enough, it means that you won't want to snack. You just won't want it because you're full enough. So the only thing where snacking might come in is if you're literally on the hop and you actually literally can't eat your main meals and you just need some things to tide you over. But on the whole, what I see when people ask for healthy snacks is that when I look at their main meals, they're not actually eating enough in their main meal. So therefore, you've got to reach for a snack. Um, and the research bears it out that structured meal-based approach, so not fasting, not keto, anything like that, leads to improved body composition and metabolic health because you're keeping that your insulin response level, your blood sugars level, because you're eating three main meals, and they need to be three main meals with all three macros in all three main meals. So rather than thinking, oh, I've got to get that protein in and just waiting till the end of the day, you need it drip fed through your proportions in every meal, as well as your carbohydrates, as well as your fats. So if you're eating sufficiently and nourishingly with a nourishment mindset with your main meals and not thinking, oh, I've got to think small because that's how I'll lose weight. That doesn't work because what you do is you snack then instead and forget that you're snacking. Eat sufficiently. Um, and then the other one, who here falls under this one, do you think? Just give me a Y for yes and a N for no. So it's that. No. Okay. Anyone else? Oh, no. There's definitely some people in here that definitely do fall under this category. Um, Most of you think no. That's interesting. Yeah, you can do. So this is that. Yeah, still some yeses, but mainly no. I'm going to check that in your nutrition at the end of the week. Is that falling under the you're looking at your plate and you're thinking, well, that's really healthy. It's got like avocados, it's got nut butters, I've got a handful of nuts, that's really great. I'm using olive oil, it's really good. Mediterranean diet, blah blah blah. They are healthy, but again, it still comes down to overall calorific intake. And so I am often seeing loads of avocados, mashed avocados on toast, a whole like avocado or half an avocado in the morning, half of an avocado at lunch. They are healthy, but they're not. They're very calorific. Olive oil, again, be very careful when you're using it in your salad dressings and your cooking that you're not just using a glugger, that you're not just turning it up and glugging it. You notice if you put it into a hot pan, oil, a teaspoon, wait until it heats up and you see the difference and how much oil that it actually is as the heat up. As you heat it up, it will spread and you'll realize you don't need as half as much as you think you do need. Again, avocado oil, very healthy, but hugely calorific. Nut butters, big scoop of nut butter. If you actually measured what you put on a piece of toast, you'd probably be quite shocked at how much a peanut butter spread bit of toast is when you actually spoon it rather than knifing it. So things like that, being really conscious of, yes, they're healthy, but actually in terms of my protein, I think people do the nuts because they're trying to think of protein. In terms of the actual number of amount of protein you get compared to the calorific intake of those nuts, there are better sources to get your proteins from. Um, and then this is the other one, which might be new to some of you, or you might not have thought about, is the glycemic index. So all foods have got this glycemic index. You can look it up, ChatGPT will pull it up, ranging from high to low, and it's a scientifically formula that shows how quickly, basically, the sugar is released into your blood system. So carbohydrates are absolutely necessary. I don't believe anybody should be cutting out carbohydrates, but in midlife, we're not as able to process fast release carbohydrates. Therefore, those types of carbohydrates, if we're releasing blood really quickly into the system, we're not, it can affect our insulin response. Sometimes we're getting insulin resistance, and typically that will go on as fat storage. So again, this is probably obvious to you, but I'm going to say it because sometimes it's not. Eating fat is not the only thing that creates fat. It's overeating carbohydrates, healthy fats, protein, any of that, if you're overeating it, is going to create body fat. It's not just eating fat turns to body fat, all of it does. Fast release carbohydrates in particular for midlife women, you want to be really careful of. Because of that high insulin spike. So when you're sometimes looking at if you are tracking and you're looking at your overall intake and you're thinking, oh, well, my carbohydrates are good, that's a good level, that's a good level, and you're maybe still not getting the results, you need to look at the types of carbohydrates you're eating. What does slow down the release? So say you just think, oh, I just really want a particular thing. If you pair it with protein, it slows down the release of that sugar. So that will have an impact. But really, you want to be thinking about lower glycemic index sources. So instead of banana snacks, have an apple. Oh, bananas, satsumas, and oranges at the moment, I'm seeing quite a lot of. Nothing wrong with a banana in the morning with oats and stuff, but thinking about them as snacks, probably a slower energy release will be your apples, pears, berries, those kinds of fruits. Your rices instead of pasta, your sourdough breads instead of like ultra processed breads, those kind of things will have a slower release. And anyone who's still eating granola, it's not a light breakfast. And that granola, you're better off just having oats, chia seeds, and using cinnamon as your sweetener and fruit as your sweetener, because that has the added impact that you're getting better fiber and gut microbiome than something like granola. So thinking about that. So what this means for you, no light weights, thinking about, well, light weights, what light weights are for you. If anything feels light, it's probably the wrong thing. You need to be progressively overloading. You don't need smaller portions. You need to be thinking about your macros and proper meals. You don't need healthier snacks, and you don't need to be disciplined. It's just about progression and using the data to help strategy. So real progression, thinking about your load every time you exercise and actually thinking about it. Because typically, most of you have all gone to a class. I know what it's like. I taught outdoor small group classes for years, and getting people to remember to take accountability for the weight they lifted It doesn't happen. You often abdicate all responsibility by going to a class. So you need to be thinking when you're doing these workouts, what am I lifting? How do I feel? Does that really feel like an eight? Shall I just try and see if I can go up? Because for a lot of you, learning what that 1 to 10 and 8 to 10 range feels like in terms of a strength workout will be a learning process as well. It's also about your mindset and learning that what that feels like, really fueling, and then that real metabolic understanding that comes from thinking about the types of carbohydrates you're eating rather than cutting out carbohydrates as a type. So test properly when we're getting to benchmark tests for you. Remember that it's also a learning process mentally, not just physically. So don't beat yourself up if actually you look back and think, oh God, I wasn't doing 8 out of 10 at all. For some of you new to strength training, that will take a little bit of time. Track and progress every session. I'll come back to someone's questions in here. Lean into failure. That's where adaptation comes. And from the nutrition, thinking about if you are still struggling and thinking, I want to snack all the time, think about actually, am I eating fully? Look back at your meals and think, what can I add to that that will help? Have I got enough protein in, for instance? Because the protein takes longer to digest, so it keeps you fuller for longer. Look back at that. Make sure you're just eating enough. Sometimes I see tiny little plates, so obviously you're going to snack because you're just not eating enough. Healthy food still has calories, and your glycemic index matters more than ever in midlife. So if you were to understand one aspect of of anything, it would be thinking about your glycemic index of certain carbohydrates.